Let me ask you something. Why do some men rise to extraordinary success, while others struggle for decades, even though they may possess the same intelligence, the same education, and even similar opportunities? Most people blame luck. Others blame circumstances. But the truth is far more unsettling. The real difference often exists inside the mind, in hidden fears that quietly influence every decision a man makes, long before he ever realizes it. There exists an invisible enemy that has destroyed more dreams than poverty itself. It does not arrive with violence or noise. Instead, it whispers quietly inside the mind. It suggests hesitation. It creates doubt. It convinces a man that his ambitions may be too risky, too unrealistic, too dangerous to pursue. And slowly, without realizing it, his courage begins to shrink, while opportunity quietly moves on without him. Most men never realize how strongly fear influences their decisions. They believe they are simply being careful, practical, responsible. But hidden beneath those reasonable thoughts is something deeper. Fear quietly persuades the mind to avoid risk, delay action, and remain within the safety of familiar routines. Over time, these small decisions accumulate, and years later, a man may suddenly realize that the life he lives was shaped more by fear than by ambition. Through careful observation of human behavior, a remarkable pattern appears. Nearly every fear that limits human success can be traced to 6 basic forms. 6 psychological forces that quietly sabotage ambition, weaken confidence, and destroy initiative. When a man begins to recognize these fears, he suddenly notices their influence everywhere. In business decisions, in personal relationships, and most importantly, in the silent conversations taking place within his own mind. The most destructive of all fears is the fear of poverty. This fear quietly persuades millions of men to play life safely. They avoid risk. They delay bold decisions. They remain in situations that offer security, even when those situations slowly drain their ambition. Yet here is the strange paradox of life. The intense desire for security often produces the very poverty a man fears. Because opportunity rarely rewards hesitation, it rewards courage. There is perhaps no fear more destructive to human ambition than the fear of poverty. It quietly enters the mind and begins to shape decisions long before a man even notices its presence. Under its influence, many men abandon bold plans, postpone opportunities, and choose the comfort of routine over the uncertainty of growth. Yet history repeatedly reveals a powerful truth. Wealth rarely rewards hesitation. It rewards the individual who possesses the courage to act, even while uncertainty remains. When the fear of poverty controls the mind, it rarely appears as panic or alarm. Instead, it appears as caution, hesitation, and endless planning without action. A man may spend years preparing, analyzing, and waiting for the perfect moment, but perfect certainty rarely arrives. And while he waits, the bold individual moves forward, experiments, learns, and gradually builds the very success that hesitation prevented. Another powerful influence upon human behavior is the fear of criticism. Human beings possess a deep desire for acceptance and approval. From childhood, we are taught to avoid embarrassment, to avoid judgment, and to avoid rejection. As a result, many men silently ask themselves a dangerous question before taking action. What will people think? And in that single moment, countless ambitions quietly fade away. History provides a fascinating lesson for anyone who fears criticism. Nearly every revolutionary idea was once ridiculed. Nearly every visionary was once misunderstood. The individuals who eventually changed the world were not those who avoided criticism, but those who continued forward despite it. The opinions of others lose their power the moment a man decides that his purpose is greater than their approval. Another fear that quietly influences human thinking is the fear of ill health. While concern for physical well-being is natural, constant worry about the body can weaken both mind and spirit. A mind filled with anxiety becomes distracted, energy fades, enthusiasm declines, and the ability to concentrate begins to weaken. Success demands vitality, not only of the body, but of the mind that directs it. The human mind and body are closely connected. A confident and disciplined mind strengthens the body, while a fearful and anxious mind gradually weakens it. When thoughts are dominated by worry, the body responds with tension, fatigue, and exhaustion. But when thoughts are guided by purpose and determination, energy begins to return, and strength follows naturally. There exists another fear that quietly shapes human decisions: the fear of losing love. Human beings naturally desire affection, acceptance, and belonging. Because of this deep emotional need, many men begin to limit their ambitions in order to preserve approval. They silence bold ideas, avoid controversial decisions, and gradually reshape their dreams to satisfy the expectations of others. And without realizing it, their true potential slowly fades into compromise. Every man who achieves meaningful success eventually discovers a difficult truth. Great ambition rarely develops in an environment where approval is constantly required. A man who shapes his goals according to the expectations of others will always live within the limits of their imagination. True progress begins only when an individual develops the courage to think independently and pursue his vision regardless of doubt. Another common fear, quietly encouraged by society, is the fear of old age. Many people are conditioned to believe that opportunity belongs only to youth. But experience reveals a very different reality. Years of struggle refine judgment. Years of learning build wisdom. And years of persistence develop powerful character. A disciplined mind often becomes stronger with time, not weaker. Many remarkable achievements throughout history were accomplished long after youth had passed. Because experience produces something far more valuable than energy alone. It produces judgment. A man who has endured difficulty, observed failure, and continued forward often develops a strength that youth alone cannot provide. And that strength becomes the foundation of extraordinary success. Perhaps the most universal fear of all is the fear of death. Every human being eventually becomes aware that life is temporary. For some men, this realization inspires urgency, but for others, it creates hesitation. They delay their dreams, postpone important decisions, and assume there will always be another opportunity tomorrow. Yet tomorrow is never guaranteed. The greatest tragedy in life is not failure. Failure often teaches powerful lessons. The true tragedy is something far more painful. It is the discovery, late in life, that a man possessed extraordinary potential, yet never fully used it. Because hesitation, fear, and delay slowly convinced him that his dreams could wait. Fortunately, every one of these fears shares a common weakness. They thrive only in darkness. The moment a man recognizes them, studies them, and observes their influence on his thinking, their power begins to weaken. Awareness becomes the first step toward freedom. Because the mind cannot conquer an enemy it refuses to identify. Success, therefore, becomes less about external circumstances and more about internal discipline. A man who learns to direct his thoughts toward opportunity rather than fear gains a powerful advantage. Confidence begins to grow, action becomes easier, and courage gradually replaces hesitation. The mind that masters fear begins to shape a completely different future. Examine your thoughts carefully. Which of these fears has been quietly influencing your decisions without your awareness? Because the moment you confront that fear, you take the first step toward freedom. And once the mind becomes free from fear, ambition expands, courage awakens, and the path toward success becomes remarkably clear.